Welcome back. Welcome back, everybody, to Vacuous Vocation. Along with me today is the great and powerful Brandon Loschiavo. Brandon, how are you doing?
Wow, that's very kind. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back on. I'm excited for chatting on this episode. So I'm excited to see where you take us.
Yeah, well, where I want to take us is into the beautiful philosophy of anarchism. And even more so than just a philosophy, it is in some sense a way of life, a way of looking at life. And what I also wanted to talk to you about is the president of Argentina, Javier Milei, a self-proclaimed anarcho-capitalist Austrian economist. And I just want to get your thoughts, bro. Where did anarchy? Where did it come into your life? How has it affected your life? And where do you see it going?
Well, before that, just since you brought him up, though, I think that's an interesting piece to kind of nag at and just touch. But do you think that's even possible to get someone like that in a big Western country such as our own?
Well, it depends. I mean, at the moment, that seems tough. But I mean, I'm a secessionist. I believe in, states seceding. So, like, if Texas had an election somewhere that's more, conservative leaning, I think you have more of a chance. I mean, Argentina suffered from hyperinflation, right? So, like, maybe it would take a a liberal or a progressive catastrophe to lay the soil that's kind of fertile for these, more quote unquote revolutionary ideas in politics to take shape.
Yeah, I think I do. I will say, though, like, just in my mind, seeing that, a country now has a president that, is stouting off that they're an anarcho-capitalist or like a libertarian is kind of a big step. I feel like that's a big change, like a paradigm shift in like seeing that. Because, I mean, most of the presidents that we see today are, one of the same. They're like, they say different, they're on a different team, but it's the same shit. And then you kind of finally have someone that's down to push down some walls and change things. And that starts by like your words and, saying that you are of a different breed and you're walking into this like presidential campaign and, now his term with, a different mindset for where he wants to take the country. That's pretty legit.
Yeah. I mean, I would say for myself, it's kind of remarkable because my like group chat for my master's class are like posting things of Javier Milei, and he's like praising my professor Huerta de Soto, and is like also my dissertation advisor Philip Baggis. He's like saying happy birthday or something to him. So I'm like 1 degree of separation away from this guy, and I'm like, holy shit! I never would have thought that, let alone an anarcho-capitalist would be the president of a country, but like that these ideas would manifest in this way in this time. And I don't know, bro. It's just remarkable. But he's giving me so much energy to just be like, yeah, like we are making progress in this idea for freedom, for anarchism, for freedom. I mean, for liberty. Like that's what that's what it kind of comes down to, is like being free.
I feel like it might take a long time, but at some point, I feel like good ideas end up rising to the top, regardless of how much pushback there is. I mean, you kind of saw a lot of that with, name the issue within the U.S. that we've kind of had to deal with. You've kind of seen the good ideas and like the truth eventually rise to the top. And, you're seeing that starting to be in a world scale to where you have, more of a freedom-based president, getting into a country and like really pushing for something different. And I guess we have to just sit back and see how he actually does. Or does he kind of just falter into, that power hungry and then, do as most other presidents do and just ruin shit?
Yeah. I think so far he's repealed like 300 laws.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
All right. So he's doing pretty well.
I think, yeah. I mean, I'm not following Argentine politics that close, other than, for moral support of the guy. But yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to see for me kind of hearing that, because it's something you never really expect to come, and then once you see it, you kind of just like sit back for the ride. You know, it's like, for example, the U.S. It's like, all right, hey, they're like some of the things that we do within our politics. You're like, I can't believe this is actually happening. Let's sit back and see how this actually starts to play out. Like, for example, I've heard a couple of states are just saying, hey, we're just going to give Biden the placement, and we're not going to have any sort of debates, and we're just going to bypass all of that. And so it's like, to me, you're like, hey, like that's unbelievable. I mean, you talk about having a democracy and you want the people to speak, you want to see active dialogue, and you're taking out one of the most fundamental pieces within our country. And you're just like, nah, shh. You know? And so it's like, when I see stuff like that, I'm like, okay, let's just like sit back and see how this actually like pans out. And so when I saw the whole Argentina new president, all these things start to pan out that way, I'm like, okay, like for once I get to sit back and, you know, see how does a potential positive pathway start to spin. And it's, I feel like I'm so used to seeing shit all the time on both sides. Again, in the US, it's kind of the same flip of the coin. You're going to get the same thing. Eventually it's going to go one way or the other, but you practically fighting the same fight all the time, let it be Democrat or Republican. You know, it just depends on what decade you're in.
Yeah. Back to the point of like truth. I saw this quote. Who was it? Newton, maybe? Like, truth is like a lion. You just got to set it free. And it will take its place. And I think that's true. I do think that these ideas will prevail. They're winning. People are seeing the common sense of you know, how socialism does not produce the promises that it gives to people. And also even with like the government and the state and fascism, that it's just not sustainable. I think like people are learning economics, you know what I mean? It's really cool. It's really inspiring. It's really uplifting.
Yeah. It just, to me, watching the same things happen over and over and over again. Obviously we're very young, but like for you hammer through a bunch of history books, so you get to watch it and read through how we've kind of run into the same problems over and over and over again. And it's just kind of crazy for the socialist ideologies that keep coming back, and we have to keep running into it. And then, you know, dealing with the whole Marxist ideology slapped on top of that. It's kind of just like funny to see people trying to find any logical path for it to work out, which it really has not ever worked out.
Dude, I was getting into a like scuffle in the comment section on this Instagram page with like some, you know, Marxists, and like it was basically on a Marxist lecture, and I just made the comment, if I pay someone $1 billion to cut my grass, who's exploiting who? And I had a bunch of comments. A lot of people liked the comment. A lot of people were replying to the comment saying like, you don't even get it, you're misunderstanding it, like it's still exploitation. And so then my rebuttal is always like, okay, at what price is it not exploitation anymore? And then like I'm realizing that they think that profit is synonymous with exploitation, because they're saying, you know, for you to make profit, you're not doing anything, but the people that are producing something, you're kind of like taking some off what they produced, hence the profit, hence exploitation. The thing is that in the specialization of division of labor in a society, the person who produces a good is not the same person who's selling the good to consumers and marketing the good. You know what I mean? There's transportation. That's why it's like Leonard Reed's eyed pencil. It takes 1 billion people to produce one single pencil, from the people who mine the wood or the graphite to cutting the trees to get the wood, to getting the rubber, to driving it on trucks, to making the truck. It takes millions of minds, all with their own direction, to create one single pencil. So there's going to be profit. But the thing is, it's like, I'm not even I'm defending profits. I'm for profit maximization, because when you maximize profits, you're decreasing your waste, and so you're utilizing scarce resources to the ends that consumers desire the most of. The issue becomes when you have the government who gets involved. And let me just finish this rant. Where, with war and how the modern state wants everything to be a war, it's just a reusing resources towards ends. There's like, basically it's the idea that it's a trade-off. We either can have food and shelter for people who need it, or we can take resources and make them into missiles and blow other shit up. So you're robbing poor people. You're robbing people who need these goods. So we'd be much wealthier if we didn't have war, because all our wealth is getting blown up. And not only that, you're wasting the wealth for future generations, like you and me. And so, yeah, there is still very much in our society like a lack of understanding of economics, of scarcity, of capitalism, and yeah, I mean, that's okay. Like, that's just the world we live in right now. But
yeah. I feel like there's like a inherent viewpoint of evil when it comes to money. But I feel like if you were to start to like skew the argument towards even just doing good for good, so if you were to sell me a pencil and I gave you an eraser, or you were to sell me a pencil and I gave you a scissor instead, like, I wonder if they would see, like, a socialist in that scenario, would you see that as a negative? Because I feel like the money that we have and the dollars that we print, I feel like have an inherent evil kind of put behind them because of all of these, let's say, wars or, piss poor management by the government of our money. And so their only thought is, well, like, why don't we just equalize it to take away that evil? But I feel like they don't like actually understand that, that within itself is evil, and that creates, death within itself.
Right. They think, the means justify the ends, right? So if we just created a situation where everyone's equal, regardless of how we get there, then it's for the good. It's for the greater good. But yeah, to get there, what does that require? Well, it requires severe interventionism and curtailing of what any resemblance of a free society would have. And not only that, people also, they forget, because they believe in this idea of a new socialist man, they forget that people have different aspirations and aptitudes and desires and want to do different things. So even if everyone started hypothetically at the same level in the same playing field, everyone had the same shit, instantaneously people would be trading that shit, and people would already be accumulating more wealth than others and just going off and doing different things. That's why you can't control a society unless you're using force and violence. And some socialists actually do want, to use force and violence on the capitalists and the bourgeoisie. But then those are murders. And there's no like, and that's what is so beautiful. Back to Javier Milei, he's exposing socialists. He's not saying, wait, I'm respectful. Like, where is this? He's saying, no, you guys are murderers. I cannot give you an inch because you would literally kill us. And that's like, damn, like, who's making that argument today? Yeah. Javier Milei. And like, that energy is very much needed, I think, right now, because that's what socialism is, man. It goes back to John Locke and the question of who owns you. Do you own yourself, or does the state own you? And I was listening to Yuri Maltsov talking about part of that's what socialism is. It's public slavery. Part of public slavery is public education, and the other part is like public. It's not even it's like public health care, but it's not, there's no such thing as healthcare. It's only like medical services. Healthcare is what you provide for yourself, right? So public medical services is then the state, being the public, determining what treatment you get and whether you live or you don't get to live. And so that's like, when you have socialized medicine is number one. Medicine was the first, it's the target of all socialists, not under Nazi Germany. It was the first place to have socialized medicine. So, essentially under socialized medicine, the doctors determine who lives and when you die. And it's so fucked, but It's just the reality. And it's like, and people are like, no, capitalism is incompatible with healthcare. It's like, first of all, you're looking at healthcare as not the provision of a service, of medical goods, right? You're looking at it as like this bullshit United Nations human right thing. And it's like, even to get there, you have to have doctors. And then, so then you're getting into the economics, right, of the complexity where it's like, okay, what should the doctors be paid? Well, the market can determine that. But in socialized medical care in Soviet Russia, doctors were getting 1/3 the salary of bus drivers. In Cuba, they get paid little. So there's a shortage of doctors. Because why would I be a doctor when I can make more money being a bus driver?
Yep.
And then it's like, there's a joke, right, in socialist countries where it's like, they pretend they're paying us and we pretend they're working for them. So it's the complete disintegration of a market society, and that leads to the chaos of it. Also, oh yeah, go on.
Well, I was just gonna say it's interesting because, I mean, you bring it back to a less, philosophical end, and you bring it down to the person of like why anarcho-capitalism would make sense, and that's how I like my mind, right? Like this is your PhD, and you're working in depthly on the intellectual side, but like, how can I dumb this down for me so I can understand this? And it's like, personal sovereignty is a big one. And obviously you could say like a lot of the Republicans are like, I'm personally, it's like, yeah, cool. Yeah. Keep giving all of your money to the war and like, see how that keeps turning out. But like my mind goes to like, especially the healthcare. How can I bring this down to an internal way of how can I walk back a lot of my personal sovereignty to where I can take care of myself? How can I make sure that I can take, a lot of my personal sovereignty in the sense of health, and I equate that to wealth, because if you're healthy physically, it's easier for you to think clearly, and you don't have to be dependent. And so I guess like I'm taking a long way of getting there. It's like, if you are dependent on the state, right? If you are obese and you are diabetic, now you need these prescriptions because you have hypertension, and you are now locked into them because you were eating, name any cereal brand. So you're eating practically sugar for your breakfast, and then lunch, you're inducing every freaking meal is just like overcarbed with fake food, a bunch of sugar. And so it's like, I guess I walk it to, well, let's take personal sovereignty. Let's be healthy first. And then we can start walking into the intellectual side, right? For you. And then we can start to walk into how we can start to. Did I lose you?
I'm here. I think my camera just.
Your camera shut off.
Yeah.
But my whole point here is, you have to clean your bed first. You have to make your bed, clean your room before you. It's the whole Jordan Peterson, like clean your room and then start solving problems outside of that. And so I think one big piece is like making sure that you're like physically healthy to be able to think the right way and take the right actions. And not to say you couldn't do both at the same time, but it's easier when one is kind of skyrocketing in the right direction. And so, that was one big thing for me once I was easing my way into the anarcho-capitalist world, was like figuring out a way to be more self-reliant. And so, once I am done with my career in diving, like I would love to have my own chickens. And like it's the stupid joke. It's like once you own your own chickens, that's when you become like a conspiracy theorist, because like you start learning, okay, like why are all eggs looking exactly the same, which they shouldn't be. If you had like your own like hens, like you would see that like most of them are completely different. And you just start to see like big ag and all of these things. You're like, holy shit, like it's all connected, and it's all just to like keep you roped into this system. And so obviously I took a long route to explain why I think, your physical health is just as important as like intellectualizing why, you want to be an anarcho-capitalist. And I think that's like an important piece for me, is to like really live that physically, so you can like start to, theorize and live it intellectually and mentally.
Yeah. There's a cool hyperpop artist. Her name's like Meza or something. And she's like a goth chick, but she just started posting videos on Instagram of like her pumps, and like she's just been like going hard in the gym and lifting. And it's just so inspiring. I'm like, damn, she's like, I'm gonna be the first like goth hyperpop artist to be like shredded. And it's sick because she's just like always flexing. I swear it's the same video of her just like flexing her biceps.
Yeah.
And it's like, damn, like you can really mesh so many different ideas and lifestyles together. You don't have to be like of a certain, you know, aesthetic or variety. And I think like anarchy, in a way, it's panarchy. It's like there's room for all different types of lifestyles to live harmoniously, and you know, like the best types of society will prevail. And I think for health, right, for like longevity, for your mind, for your body, it's all connected.
Yeah. I think I guess my point is like, you know, not to make this like very like split down the middle, but like I think anarchy is a little bit fat phobic is my point.
Fat phobic.
Oh,
I see.
You know, because if you are in poor health, and I know you don't want to like split people and viewers and members, but I'm just going to say it, like there's a piece to it to where it's like if you are not in good health, you do not own your own sovereignty. If you have to go out to get help consistently, if you need insulin shots because you are diabetic, like you are not free, because then you are now relying on these things and you have to pay and you have to be interconnected with this whole system that's a little bit backwards.
I mean, I see what you're saying, bro, but like the thing is, I don't think, you know, we're like traditional agrarian farmers in a way. Like that's like pure individualism. That I'm more metropolitan. Like I like being in the city. I think there's room for everyone. You know what I mean? Like, and personally, I do have family members who are diabetic, and it's like we are reliant on society, and so it's like, yeah, it's just like.
That's why I said lightly fat phobic. I'm not saying entirely, you know, but there's a piece. There is a piece to where it is. I mean, it's not binary. Like I understand that, and
listen,
it's kind of it was a hard statement. But if you do think about it, though,
I
like,
think what you mean to say. I think, let me cut you off there. I think what you mean to say is if you live off taxes and you're a parasite, a political parasite to society, there is no room for you in anarchy. That's definitely what you mean to say.
Sure. But I guess I was bringing it down to a dumber piece to where,
yeah.
Well, I think there is a piece to your physical health that needs to be looked at. And again, it's like, if you want to be disconnected from bad systems, then being free of medical need is going to be one easy way to get out of, let's say, like big pharma and a lot of their piss poor deals and all the things that you would have to run into. Let that be your insulin shots being unbelievably like overpriced. You wouldn't have to deal with that if you didn't have that issue.
Right.
Obviously not everyone is. There's two different types of diabetes. And so, like, I'm not saying that like some people are born being diabetic, but
I mean, let me ask you this, bro, because to me it seems like, you know, in the Matrix, there's people who get saved at different stages of their life, and it's like some people have just grown up being more dependent on the system, and then like, you know what I mean? It's kind of like a spectrum. It's I don't think you can say it's purely binary in that sense, right?
No, yeah,
so it's like,
yeah. It was I can gladly walk that back. It was a very aggressive statement. I got maybe a little excited, but I think my point being is at least how I connect myself with a lot of ideas within anarchy is making sure that you aren't just mentally there, but physically there. Because we can talk about theories at all the time, but I guess how I live and how I try to live is purely by action. Well, if I'm going to talk about this, I want to put it into action because it's fun to like, you know, do the mental gymnastics of all these things. But if you don't really try to put anything into play, then we're just kind of like mentally masturbating.
Yeah, the mental orgasms.
Yeah, and it's just kind of a semi-waste of time. And I think...
I hear you.
I mean, with us...
Fix my camera.
Yeah. With us even being within this scenario of like starting a podcast, I think this is kind of putting a lot of hours of us talking about trying to spread ideas and, you know, start fun conversation. Because again, it's not... I'm an idiot. So I think just talking about these ideas is just kind of fun. and trying to, again, at least start to look at things differently. And I feel like we don't have a lot of that because our society is so split, like so aggressively split. And so what action are we putting into play is we're at least starting to put a different idea out there to try to bring people together.
Yeah.
I think that's the action I'm trying to live by. And so I guess the reason why I brought up the joke of being fat phobic is just because, you know, it's fun to talk about, but like if you don't own your physical health, like now you're giving that away to someone else is my point. So like if you are in a situation like that, like just work towards being, you know, more free. Yeah. Which is just owning your own health. It's just a harsh reality. I think that's the problem because it gets touchy, but like that is a harsh reality that you would have to like kind of really think about and live with, because you either decide to go the easy route and, you know, eat the bad foods and not move enough, or you can take the harder route, which is to think on harder ideas, like a lot of the libertarian thoughts, which go against the grain of society, like making sure that your health is in the right position. So going against the easy, comforting, no, it's okay to be out of shape. And then you start seeing all these articles. No, it's healthy to be, you know, like 30% body fat. You're like, it's not though.
Yeah.
And like, there's a reason why you're taking insulin shots. Like you need external help for your body to keep running. Like that's not freedom. That's not freedom. And so I guess that's just how my mind works. 'Cause, you know, not the most.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're definitely inspiring people to move and live differently. I mean, you're an Olympic athlete, so that's already very prestigious, with what you have accomplished with as an example of your own body.
Sport,
which is really cool.
But I think health, like take out that, who cares about that? But like just being in good health, and that's why I talk about on my podcast, like I shoot for the everyday athlete. Like everyone's an athlete. Yeah. And so if you can just live by quality terms, just eat whole foods. And again, everything's not binary. Like I eat like shit sometimes, but I try to make that very, very unfrequently. You know, it's like sometimes. That's why I try to, like, sometimes, once a week, once a month, and really try to make sure that like that is not a frequent thing. And so, you know, these concepts of, you know, personal freedom are not super hard to come by, especially when you're talking on the physical sense. They're hard to stay with, but they're not hard, and all the information's out there. So I think, you know, it's just I guess that's how my mind works when it comes to stuff like that, because I always bring it back to the physical body.
Yeah. Well, I like that. We'll definitely come back to that. I want to come back.
That'll be a full podcast of anarcho-capitalism and physical health. Yeah,
that's not a bad idea. I do want to touch back on money, right? And this idea that like some people do associate money with being evil, right? That quote, "Money is the root of all evil." Yeah. Making money is not bad. Okay, to make money, you have to provide a good or a service to somebody else. And the thing is, when you have the easy money of printing it and having central banks just out of thin air, then shit becomes easy and you can literally make money out of thin air. So that becomes evil money. There's people who then get those deals, you know, people who make money off murdering children. That is evil money. So I see what they're saying, but in a true free society, that's not a thing. That doesn't sustain itself. And then to make money is you do provide wealth to other people. It's like inflating the balloon. You know, you're creating something, you're blowing air into the balloon. It's getting bigger. That's more wealth. There's more things you can accumulate with the same amount of money, right? But that goes into like deflation and inflation. And Bitcoin, it's like a more beautiful sound money than the dollar. And that's how I look at money. But of course, people in the modern world are still looking at it like it's evil and that it's leading to these things, which it definitely is. You know, it's contributing to like wars. It's contributing to like big pharma. Big pharma is like 40% of our economy, or like the medical industry. That's crazy.
Interesting.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I guess to just bring that on to an action based conversation, how could we walk away from the government having that much control of our money?
I mean, right? Healthcare, your own personal sovereign healthcare, like you talk about.
Well,
Moving.
in a governmental sense, is that going? Everyone leans into something like Bitcoin, or how do we get away from that
Ooh.
Federal Reserve,
I mean,
printing everything they want?
This is okay. We gotta fix the camera because it keeps turning off. This is messed up. You gotta show me in the settings.
We're gonna have to fix that.
Yeah. But I think this is the beauty of a monetary revolution, and it begins with the ideas, right? If you believe the state has to produce money, then it will. But if you believe that you as a person are sovereign and are the producer of your own wealth and money, which I don't even understand exactly how this works. I'm reading right now. Regal, The New Approach to Freedom, and his books. Can you see that? Yeah.
Yep.
Dude, this dude is incredible, and I'm just starting his books, and I'm already blown away after like the introduction. But it's a monetary revolution, and it begins with the ideological revolution of how do you see the state? How do you see yourself in existence with the state? And it's like we can't look at the state to set us free. We have to look at ourselves as setting the state free. And what he means by that is like taking back power of the money production.
Yeah. But like, I guess, how does that actually end up happening?
That's the question.
Yeah, without like a crumble of the government or just our whole United States kind of you said, seceding.
Well, Yarvin has written, I think, on this, which I haven't read, but I've heard him talk about it a little bit, where he's basically like, we have to look at it like the U.S. government is a company, they're an enterprise, and we're going to buy them out. So we print, X amount of dollars, and we're like, take this, we're buying you out. We're going to lock the doors of where you've been working. You're not going to come back, but you can have your salary and you can retire. Right? And then it's like, but you need a system in place to like kind of assume the function of the roles that are actually needed, which I think is actually not as hard as what it sounds like. But it does take a certain amount of people or something to get on board with that. I think honestly it begins with ideas and education of saying like, yeah, like look what the Fed is doing.
Yeah.
Let's end that shit first. And then let's begin at like taking the Milei approach of like dissolving.
Okay. Because I guess I feel like a lot of people would ask, okay, from theory and from talking about it, because maybe they feel like there has been a lot of talk of this concept. They're like, okay, well, what's a logical first step to take that actually would start to make something like this even possible? Because our debt keeps just getting into a black hole of not being able to come back. I don't even know how you come back with that much. No,
down. You don't.
It's
you don't. That shit's not getting paid off. It's a money printing scheme. I think that's kind of, you have to expose it for what it is. And I'm not the one to be like, yeah, like I'm going to go into the Fed and that. No, I'm just here to point it out, like expose it for what it is. And I think more people that do that than it will take a genius, like an engineering genius, to be like, okay, this is how we're going to end it. Right. And this is how we're going to like put these other things into place. But
I feel like one logical way to start at least walking towards the right path would be to pull off a lot of like regulating of the people. And then, like you said, if big pharma's 40%, like how much goes towards like random wars? And it's like, that's where our taxpayer money's going. So if we could kind of pull that off and at least maybe attempt to pay off this crazy debt, or even just make sure that like, your money's going at least in a better direction to where we could start to make change. Because like nothing's going to change if the system itself is crumbling. And so if we're trying to just like
Right.
save the system that we're in and just like repair it towards a better direction instead of just be like, hey, the whole thing crumbles. Because I feel like that's the most logical path for me in my mind is like, well, why can't we just walk to a, a more free society?
Yeah, I think one really good thing would be to repeal legal tender laws, which basically, says that this dollar is money because the government says it is. And like you can't use this as money because we don't allow it. It's like no, repeal those laws and let the people like use Bitcoin if they want, let them use gold if they want. But it's like, of course, the state doesn't want to allow that. But if more people are like, no, fuck you, we're gonna do that, then it's like, then that happens. You know what I mean? It's like that's kind of how laws get repealed is literally people being like, no, fuck that. Literally, that's what revolutions are, right? Prohibition, just shamelessly using Bitcoin. That's why they tell you it's used by criminals and all this stuff. And then also like the welfare state, looking at it for what it is. We have welfare for billionaires and corporations. Why is it that the mom and pop shops get closed down during COVID, but Target, these, these chains, corporate chains are allowed to stay open? Because it's a welfare fascist corporate system, and so yeah, we got to stop the welfare, which comes at I mean, it's not even like you have to deal with that once you end the Federal Reserve, because then they can't, print that money out of thin air. And it's like that's where I think the conversation should be really happening.
Yeah. And it's like that doesn't necessarily get produced until, we find someone that is more willing to kind of put that into action. Would you agree, like maybe 10, 15 years ago, that was more of like the Democratic side of our political country was kind of leaning towards something like that, and now that's kind of swayed over to more the Republican side? Or
I mean, definitely in 2008, when the Democrats were talking about we are the 99%, they were on to something, right? But then they got distracted. But I think a lot of them still don't understand the mechanics of money and wealth and economics, where they think we just need more money and that's going to save us. But they don't understand how, more money doesn't necessarily lead to more goods. Like production and scarcity still are the main factors. But even the conservatives, man, like Trump printed more money than like all the other presidents. So he's a socialist.
yeah.
So it's like, I don't like it. Like, there's nothing that they could say, other than like end the Fed that I'm really gonna concern myself with listening about. So,
Yeah, it reminds me of like the freeway system, and we can talk about California because that's where we both lived. But it's like they keep adding more and more lanes to the freeways, but somehow the traffic is just still as jammed up as it ever has been. And it's the concept of like, you can keep adding lanes, but that's not going to change the broken system of like our transportation. And so like if it's 2 lanes or if it's 6, like it's going to be just as packed. And so the system itself is broken. And so it's like if you don't actually have the right like public transportation, like everyone's going to be driving cars. So if you open up 6 lanes are going to be like completely jam packed. And so it's like kind of the similar situation with our government. It's like if you give them the 6 lanes to print $66 trillion for Ukraine, they're going to use it and they're going to send it over, and you have no say over that.
Yeah, and it's like you can just think about all the taxes you'll ever pay, times it by 1,000. That's what got sent to Ukraine. It's like it really doesn't mean anything. It's all for like, it's ideological, man. It's I don't know. It's physical, right? It's like this is the world, but on one hand, it's ideological. They trained us to live in this nanny state, to think we need like the parental guidance of the state for how to live our lives, that they know best. These are the elites. They are trained in the best universities. They were voted. They were elected, Brandon, sacredly by us, the people. we elected them, so they speak for us on behalf of us. And I need to get a new camera because this it's a setting. It has to be a setting.
Yeah, it is a setting.
But yeah. This is the beauty, bro. This is the beauty of anarchy. Is like you have to joke about the disgust of the political institutions because it's for power, and you see the blood on your hands, right? Like my professor told me, he's like, I don't vote because to me, if you vote, you have blood on your hands, and I'm like, damn, like that's hardcore. Like we're all just like partaking in this like sacrificial thing of like just getting blood on our hands, and it's like, if you look at it like that, that's kind of disgusting.
It's a scary concept. And it's funny how, again, kind of tribal people get, oh, you're throwing away your vote. You're like, well, I'm actually throwing it towards a good thing, which is like not playing it. Again, it's like they say, vote with your money, right? If you don't want these companies to like profit off of you, like don't buy their goods. Like if you don't want to eat these like horrible seed oils for you or whatever, don't buy them. And so, if you want to get a better camera that has already good settings, you just like buy a better camera.
I think Fujifilm has to get boycotted by me.
No, we love them.
Well, they don't love me.
No, you just turning off. Fix the setting. But yeah, I think the not voting part has actually been a very interesting thing to talk about with people, because there's no winning. Hey, I voted for this person, and they are like, how could you vote for that person? You're like, well, what about in 2024? You're like, yeah, I'm not voting. They're like, how could you? You're like, okay, so it just has to fit whoever you want to vote for. And so it falls back onto this like dogmatic thinking. You're like, what a waste of time.
Yeah. And that to that point of like, how could you not vote? And like, that's your right. It's like, bitch, it's like suffrage. You're telling me like they imprisoned me, they gave me a cookie, and you know what I mean? It's like, I'm that pity where it's like, I don't want to eat the cookie because I know I could be free eating like a steak and fruit in my home, right? But it's like, I don't know. It's like you're just getting focused on the cookie, and you're like, why don't you enjoy the cookie? Like, they gave you a cookie. Isn't that so sweet of them? And I'm like, no, don't forget like what this system is and what's going on here. It's like, what am I voting for? They're placating to me. You know what I mean? Like, they're trying to just have me think I'm free for another 4 years. But it's like, I'm looking, my children's generation, my grandchildren's generation. I don't care about the next 4 years. It's like, what is this system going to look like in 100 years, in 160 years? And it's probably not going to be with this camera.
Yeah, but your side might win.
My side, I'm not on. That's the thing. It's like, we have to take a side. No, I'm not taking
I don't want to
any
take
side.
A side
I'm
anymore.
on my own side. Yeah. I'm on your side. You're on my side.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny to run into that because they want to get mad at you because you're like, oh, well, you don't vote. You're going to be this person. You're like, no, I'm actually more so on your team than your political team. Like, I'm on your side, funny enough. Like, you might disagree with some of my concepts, but like, I'm very like, there's like both sides are like, well, we're pro freedom, or like, we're pro human. You're like, well, historically that doesn't pan out super well, and it doesn't make sense, but it is. It's like, yeah, it's I 2024. I will not be voting. I will be voting for you though.
Thank you. Yeah, viewer. I'll hold an election. Oh, I thought you meant for me.
I'll vote for you.
Yeah, I want to hold an election. I'm going to be the only person on the ballot, and that's all I need.
Perfect.
That's it. Yeah. And it's like, why do I have to be with issues 2, 4, 6, and 8, right? And it's like the other side is for like 1, 3, 5, and 7. It's like, that's because it's just this filter.
Yeah, man. I do. I forgot who said it, but maybe it was Naval, and he did. It's a very basic point. But it's, if you completely agree with one side, you're not a free thinker. If you think that every single thing the Republican side is doing is correct, you're not a free thinker. If vice versa with the Democratic side, it's just like, and again, I feel like there's a lot of there's a lot of differing thoughts and paths within that libertarian side. And it's very interesting to hear it. Not to say that you don't hear that as much, or you don't hear it as much when it comes to, the left and the right. But that is something to almost argue for if you're, voting on your own is, hey, like, I'm sorry, but like, I'm a free thinker. I'm not voting this year, or I'm not voting ever again because it's a waste of my time.
Yeah. And it's like, these people aren't impressive. You know what I mean? Like, there's some people that come along and they're impressive. Like, I don't know. If Milei was running, I would have to consider it, just because it's like, it's more the implication. You know what I mean? I don't even want him. I just want the ideas to spread. That's what I'm about, right? Like, it's all a means of ideas.
Well, it's a means to an end, right? Like, that's kind of his job. If he's going in as an anarcho-capitalist, all he's doing is working on walking back the state. And so technically you're voting to make sure that voting doesn't eventually happen, I guess would be my mindset in something like that, right?
Right.
You're shrinking it as small as you can.
Yeah, I guess it's like the distinction is, do you look at politics to liberate you and set you free, or do you think that the liberation comes from the ideas, and that, like, you know what I mean? Like, we have to separate from the political system itself. Where I do think, like, I want the dissolvement, the abolition of the state.
Yeah, I want the abolition of that setting that is
Dude,
broken.
Okay. Yeah, sorry to people trying to watch. If you're just listening, great. Don't watch this because my camera keeps shutting off.
Oh, it's so funny. But yeah, I think overall the concept, and obviously we're going to, in the next upcoming podcast, start talking about just pieces and concepts from, some media. Let that be V for Vendetta, which is going to kind of be fun to kind of talk about and discuss. But I feel like our media is really good at showing us what's coming. Like V for my goodness, if I can say it, V for Vendetta. They kind of show that, like, crazy governmental control. And it's kind of a crazy thing. Like, hey, that might be coming. They might shut off your cameras if you're trying to podcast. But
it's probably the government.
It will be kind of fun for these upcoming podcasts. We'll fix that setting so anyone that is watching doesn't want to shut this off. But
yeah, bro, we're definitely. I want to do cultural critiques because that's kind of the most important thing. We live in a society, a cultural society, right? And it's like, but our culture is flawed while we live in this state of society. So there's a lot to point out. How does neoliberalism precipitate in the milieu of the modern 2020s? We need to expose this, and culture and media is a great way to doing that. And I think that's exactly what we're going to do, because economics exists within culture as well, and so does politics. So it's a great medium for getting these ideas across, and I'm looking forward to that very much.
Yeah, and also just for people to kind of hear this, but like, this is very like pro-USA if you think about it. I think we had this argument once, not like an argument, but like discussion. Like, oh, you're an anarcho-capitalist, but like you're wearing the like United States flag, or like you're competing at the Olympics. But I'm very pro-USA. I'm pro the people of the United States of America. Like, I might not agree with, the fucked up nature of what my government does, but the country and the people that live here are incredible. And so we're pro people and we're pro USA. At least I kind of, that's how I see it. It's like, I'm very pro USA. I love this area. And if it can be seceded into, 50 countries, and the people of the United States kind of merge better that way, then perfect. But, I guess that's just my little asterisk to this. Starting this podcast is like, this isn't like fuck everything.
It's anti-state.
It's anti-state. That's it.
That's it.
Pro people.
Pro people, of course.
Pro United States people.
Sure. I'm more metropolitan, I would say. I can be in any city, you know what I mean? And I'll fuck with it, but not the state.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, does this hit the spot for you? Does that feel?
Yeah, I think so.
Do you
I
want to
don't
tell the people anything else?
um I think we'll tell them a lot over the next coming podcasts and stuff. But listen, this is more or less episode 1 of a real of like a real, you know what I mean? Like the last one we did was an intro, right? So my point is like if we tell you in the future that you got to start from episode 1 and you're starting here, great. Now listen to the next episode sequentially because there's going to be a lot we talk about and there's going to be a lot to learn. It's going to be like a college course. Your mind's going to be opened and just inserted with these ideas of things you've never heard before because Fox News won't tell you these things or CNN won't tell you these things. So just get the mental lubricant ready.
Oof. Hello.
And yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. No, I don't mean to be that aggressive, but I'm just very excited to share these ideas because they're amazing. You know what I mean? Like this is like wealth, psychological wealth, on many fronts. And yeah, hell, we'll talk about sex because it is important. It's important for society. I'm not even kidding. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I'm lubricated right now. Then
you know what I mean? There's people who don't want you to have sex, like Puritans in the state. And my camera.
your camera specifically.
Yeah. And so I don't know. There's significance to it. It's a part of culture. And money. I don't know. There's so many ideas to talk about. We'll get it organized and we'll get it to you. So I hope you like this podcast. Follow Brandon. Watch his podcast. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time.
Yes, we will. Thanks, people. Peace.
Peace.